Hello, everybody. This is Stephanie and Chelsea, and we are the co founders of CS Planners. And our new book, we are authors of Impossibly Possible, available. And today we have Anna with us for Mental Health Week. I'm so excited, Anna. Thank you so much for joining us.
Oh my God, I am so excited. I am joining you girls.
We met you was it last week or 2 weeks ago now? And ever since meeting you, I've been really obsessed with your journey and following you on social media because your life is so exciting and just seeing what you're doing inspires me to go out and, take chances and try new things. So I love following you.
Oh, thank you. That's yeah, it's pretty incredible. I'm kind of doing the same as you do, although I experienced it. I'm like, this is absolutely insane. Like I've been working so hard and so long towards being able to live a life like this. I'm sure that's the same for you girls.
Exactly. So for those out there right now that don't know your background, tell us a little bit about what you do, what you is your passion about, just for the audience and everyone out there.
So I am the injury specialist. I was an ex-professional. I am an ex-professional dancer and strength athlete. I am a sport and exercise psychologist and worked with like top teams and top performers in businesses and trained them up for better performances. And then I combined all of that with my knowledge as how the body works and how the mind works. And I have created from there my company called the Injury Specialist, where I work with people's bodies. Quite often that includes their minds too. But since the last 2 years, it finally means that I am able to work and fix clients permanently who've not been able to get fixed forever by teaching them how to do it and how to fix themselves instead of me doing it. And it turns out that that is equally as fast, if not faster. And like you girls said, it allows me to just fix so many people's bodies and help them get their lives back and get their mind in the right place again, while I also get to live my dreams and do what I love while basically going to different places in the world to do sports that I love and see people that I love.
That is absolutely amazing. And all of this is done virtually, right? Like you can do it all virtually because that is incredible. Tell us a little bit about your experience virtually because I'm sure a lot of people right now are definitely wondering more about how that works.
Yeah, if you would say that you fix people's bodies and you call yourself an injury specialist, it's hard to believe that that's possible. And I found out that it's not. Like I believed it was possible, and I just went out to prove that to myself, and that's been going really, really well. The reason why it works is because I developed a method called the tensegrity method, and the method has a certain way of working with the body. It has a certain way of looking and understanding how the body works, but most importantly, taking those two into account, it unravels the injury in the person by them applying a certain technique and like learning to understand a whole bunch of things that are related to injuries that nobody ever seems to talk to you about or knows about even sometimes. So yeah.
The thing that I love about what you do as well is because you know that the mind and body is connected. And I've shared stories about how I was an athlete in high school and it was the injury that really changed everything. And it's true, you can fix the injury, but you also have to focus on that mindset as well because when you're so used to doing something and all of a sudden you have these limitations, it's very tough for a person to process. So how do you help people with healing their mindset as well?
What a great question. Every body works the same. Not everybody is trained in the same way, and that counts for physically and that counts for mentally. And so some people that come to me, they just have a simple injury. They have great mind skills, and they're like, you know that as an athlete, you meet some people, they're like, I'm going to get fixed. I'm doing this. It doesn't matter what happens. There's only one thing that's going to happen, and that's that I'm going to be back out on the court in 4 months.
Mm-hmm.
You got those. And then you've got those who've had like an injury for a really long time, or they've listened to so many experts tell them that their injury like cannot get fixed in like 1 to 4 years. I have a client like that with a terrible double shoulder injury, and she couldn't bring her arms up to turn the lights on or bring bring food to her mouth. She couldn't wash her face. She couldn't pull up her own pants.
Wow.
And so when that happens, there's so much more that's attached to it. So not every person I work with needs help with their mind to help them recover the injury, but some people do. And the lady that had such terrible shoulders, like if I ask her like what's been the hardest thing, she always says that the work that I teach them to do on the body is the easiest part. But she was like, the hardest part for me was training my mind and getting it ready.
I could see that, because it does take a lot. I feel like for your mindset, it takes a lot from, especially I could imagine it's even hard, like, when you physically can't do something, it's hard, right? Because then, like what you were talking about with, she couldn't even like, wash her face or anything like that. It's hard because I feel like it gets like you mentally. And in those situations, what kind of strategies do you find works? And for like, tell us a little bit about, any like struggle and maybe like a struggle and what has worked for either in your life or somewhere like, any of your clients or anything like that.
Okay. So to link it with my life, I think somehow I decided that the way to have a happy and healthy life was to build a belief system that allowed it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think when I was like 24, I think I started coming up with that idea. And I just thought, I'm just going to keep building this, and I'm going to keep building new beliefs. So one of the examples to me was that I always felt like I was an athlete, but I never felt like I'd proven it. And if I'd say to somebody, I'm an athlete, they could have all sorts of opinions, and they did. And so to me, it was important to then train as hard as I could and show myself that I was an athlete. So that's actually the reason why I trained as much as an athlete and as a dancer, because I wanted to feel like when I say, like, I think this is my take on people doing affirmations. I don't like doing affirmations, but I like proving affirmations in my life, if that makes sense. Yeah. So I went out and I became a professional dancer, and I went out and I became a professional athlete, which now means I am a dancer and I am an athlete. And it's something I grew in because of actions, and that worked great for me. So to me, what your belief system is, all your habits in your brain, that's the thing that really determines what happens in your life and how you deal with things. And so I find that when it comes to and you build a toolbox with it, right? It's the same as what you guys say in your book. You develop like these systems that work. So what I find with my clients is the way I work is this program that I've built has got 10 different locations of the body, which then makes you work with all of your body. And for every module that you do, for every location, you also have an insight video. And in those insight videos, I talk about a whole bunch of these things that nobody talks about when it comes to recovery. Like it goes from plan your days and your weeks based on energy, not on time.
I love that.
Love that. That right there, love that. Right there. Oh, I want to pause there just for a second because I love that. That is probably by far the best tip that took me years to learn. And even today, I see so many people that don't follow that, and it's true because if you're burnt out, if you're overwhelmed, if you because you have a lot of energy sometimes, and in those times are the time to take the actions. And I feel like even when you have low energy, you can still do. Take some action. But I love that. I feel like building a schedule, based on your like energy and, you know, still taking action, everything that you're saying. I love that because not enough people do that. So I love that. That's incredible advice. I love that.
I love that too. And one of the reasons I learned that was what I learned is if you're a professional athlete, and I trained 9 times a week for 20 hours in total, what I learned was what that means is if you train 20 hours a week, you add another 12 hours for recovery.
Yeah.
So if then you would say I'm a 32 hours athlete. Like that's my training, because you have to take into account that recovery. And with my work, when I was working with people physically all the time, I noticed that some clients could, like, one unit of a fixing injury session sometimes took, like, every single injury session would take me it would take me 2 hours if it was 1 hour. To recover from the session. If it was a session related to psychological stuff too, and I had to go into that while working on the body, it would take me 3 hours instead of an hour to recover.
Wow.
And if they're sometimes when people would during a session would go into would go into something because they were trained to do it and they were just going there, and we would make miles. Then sometimes magic happened, and then it would be like 1 ratio to 5. Like if magic happened, it would be like 1 hour of a session turned into like 5 hours of recovery for me. So I learned to stop looking at my hours and remember like how much it takes. So those are the things that I add into the program. I talk about like how water affects the body, and when I work with people like one-on-one, people can follow just the program without too much of my input if they have an easy injury. But if people have a little bit more need for connection, then they follow the program and have my guidance. And they get like about 30 minutes per module that we work together. And then there is the bit where we get to really see what happens in a person's mind. And my favorite thing to explain to them is to get them to get a piece of paper and draw a line on the right bottom and on the left top. And then I tell them, give me a story of something really difficult that happened, which both of you girls have. And start with your pen on the right bottom corner and draw out how that went. That was great, and I thought I was getting there, and then holy no, not at all. And then I thought I got right back to the beginning, but actually it wasn't that bad. And and I make them talk me through, but their pen has to draw it out on paper.
That's really cool.
That's so cool. That's so unique. Honestly, I think I'm going to try that.
Yeah, please do.
Yeah, because that's amazing. Because even as you're describing it, like I can imagine, like because it's like your journey on paper. That's incredible.
Yeah, and I love that because I like to learn through doing, and I came up with this because this is that way. Because what the conclusion is, to kind of spoil it a little bit for you, is you're going to have a piece of paper that has 2 dots, a start and a finish. And that's going to have an extremely squiggly line in between it. And then at the top, you're going to write, this is what progress looks like.
I love that.
I love that. I just got goosebumps.
Or they put recovery with Anna. Or they put how I get on my bike again. So whatever it is that I've figured out is the big thing that we're working towards. Because everybody wants a body that works, but everybody's reason for wanting a body that works is different. I want to be able to play with my kids. I want to hold my kid. I'm the grandparent. I want to pick my parents up. I want to pull my own pants up. Like,
yeah.
That's the kind of stuff that people really care for. And a healthy, happy body that works is what we need for it. And so I make them do that at the point where I make them do that the first time where normally they start making progress quite nicely at the beginning, and I surprise everybody. And then there's always a bit where they're like,
Yeah.
made this much progress in 4 days, and now I've made like this much progress in 20 to like 10 days. And then they get really upset. And then I make them do this, because if you Google like what does success mean, we all know this picture, right? We've all seen it fly by, but you don't really learn anything from the picture, I think. So
no, never.
I
You just
love
see
that.
the end point.
Yeah.
Yeah, whatever. So that's something that I make them do, and then I link onto that trust. Confidence is another thing that builds up slowly, and those are the kind of like the big themes that we talk about. And so when I ask my clients, how are you doing? Like at some point they're like, well, you know, I just remember all the things that I've gained in the toolbox from you. And then they say, I remember the trust thing. I remember the success is not a straight line, which is the drawing they make, because they all think success and recovery is a straight line. And they get royally upset. Everybody does. It doesn't matter who it is. At some point, every person I work with is going to be absolutely depressed and pissed off. And I always like voice the things I know they'll be thinking. And I'm like, I'm sure you're thinking, why did I think Anna was any different than all the other people I've gone to see? Why did I put more money into this? I'm never going to get fixed. So you kind of see what happens. And so they built this toolbox over time, quite often with the basics that are in the program, and quite often when they work with me with what I see they need at the time. And then the most important thing is there is this thing called the hero's journey. I'm sure you've heard of it. Every marketing person throws this in your face. The thing about the hero's journey is that what happens when somebody starts recovering is they exactly follow that line. And because I know the hero's journey so goddamn well, from lots of different ways in my own life, from my own struggles, from training, from losing a parent, from, you know, finding things difficult in my own life, but also from an outdoor perspective. Like they use that for every like outdoor therapy type of thing. That's kind of the stuff I started with when I started studying. And what's not often described, but what happens every time in a recovery process is like people get to the bottom, which is called the trough of despair. And then they're like, it's never going to get better. And then they gain these tools, right? Then they start getting better and their body starts feeling better. And always when we're about 3/4 of the way of getting recovered, they have this dip. It happened with the people I worked with burnouts too. All the time, like every single time, like clockwork. And I would see their face and I would get messages throughout the week and I'd see their face and I'd be like, we're there. Yeah. And to me, that means celebrating.
That's what we say too. It's a final challenge you need to overcome.
Yeah. Yep. And I'm celebrating because I know in the hero's journey, they call it, you got to slay the dragon. You know, you felt really bad because you didn't know how to slay the dragon. You met somebody who teaches you and teaches you and teaches you and shows you that you can do it. And then just before you slay the dragon, this is like a metaphor, just before you slay the dragon, which an injury is the reason why you got injured in the first place, or the big mind thing that's related to it. So for this shoulder client, for example, who couldn't feed herself, the big dragon was what happened in her mind and how she would be like questioning things, worrying about things. And it would just go round and round and round and round. And then another 50 times and really stubborn and stuck. And so we get to every time with every client, we get to this stage. And I'm like, well, congratulations. And they get really pissed off when I say that because they're like, I have had the worst week ever. And I'm like, hooray, because let me tell you, this is exactly where you need to be. I hate it when people say that unless they can explain it to me. So I go, let me explain it to you.
Yeah. No.
And then,
Sorry, go ahead.
And then I make them understand they're there, and then they fight the dragon, and then all of a sudden, like, that's the moment they realize what tools they actually got, because they've just secretly gained them most of the time. Anyway.
And they didn't realize sometimes in the process until they get there, and then you look back and you're like, well, there we go.
Yeah.
So you did write a blog for a website that is now live, and you talk about the loss of your father. And
Yes.
your story is very interesting because you talk about how he was this athlete. He was very physically active. His body was incredibly strong. But then it seemed like over the past, I think the last 15 years, there was a switch, or he felt disconnected with his body. Is that something that inspired you to start this journey?
Yeah, but I never realized that. I think insights like that come at the end. That's why they call it hindsight.
Yeah.
I never realized it. I knew the moment I was going to do my speech and I was preparing for it. I knew that I was realizing and figuring something out that was huge. Yeah, I remember, because the story is about chariots of fire, and I remember realizing, which kind of happened. I realized that because I watched him pass away. I was there when he passed away, when he took his last breaths, as was my sisters and my mom. So we were there and we watched it happen. Wow. And I saw the weirdest thing. And I think everybody who's ever seen anybody pass away in like this was like a home environment. I don't know what it's like in war, but when you've seen somebody pass away, to me, what happened was you could see like, you could see whatever made him a person, whatever was the energy that was my dad, you could literally see it fall out of his like face. Wow. And so what happened to me, what I saw, I don't know if other people see it or if I made it up to, make myself be okay. It doesn't really matter which one it is. But I saw this energy, the person he was, like energy is always a bit of a difficult word, but I saw it from feet to head come into the center of his body. And then it just looked like it just popped out the center.
Oh, wow.
And I thought it was so helpful for me, because that to me split things. I couldn't really get over the idea that bodies got buried in a coffin. I always think that's a bit odd. But the moment I looked at this marble body, and I looked at it and I could feel and I could see it was not what to me was my dad. Because what to me was my dad had popped out and was now free. And so that kind of got me to writing. I got upset about that he didn't want this chariots of fire in his funeral, and I found a way to put it in anyway. Yeah. And so that's kind of like how it came together, and I don't think I realized it at the time, but the impact of it was so big. And like for me, the impact of seeing what happens and what the effect is for somebody who loves a person who gets disconnected with their body, and then how much harm they can do because they're disconnected. It's so brutal. Like it just made me go, if you don't have a body, you cannot live.
Yeah.
And when he got really sick before that, I saw your world is as big as your body can carry you. Like he was stuck in a room and he couldn't get out of his bed on his own. So that was his world. The only thing. And I just remember thinking, it's just absolutely brutal. And it was like a huge like headline for my own How to Live Your Life of like, if you do not take care of your body, suffering will come. It's not like if I'm lucky, I get away with it. No, nobody ever gets away with it.
Interesting. That's very true. And I feel like that's a really important lesson for people to actually learn and understand, and life is also so limited too. Like just because you take care of your body at one point, you still need to keep up with being able to, your mind as well, and that whole connection with everything. So I love what you do, because I feel like you're literally the jack of all trades.
I have people sometimes. There's this beautiful lady in the UK who works with people who've lost limbs, and she does their personal injury claims, and we know each other through work. And so she sends people my way who have these awful stories, and she often is like, I feel like this person needs like sports psychology, performance kind of coaching too. Should I get somebody else in, or can we just put that all together? I'm like,
I got this.
yeah, like I think with what I do, it's impossible to not take the mind into account.
Mhm.
And when you work with the mind, my work was on the front of it was working with people's minds, I'd still make them go and train. I'd still make them go and do physical things.
I love that. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. We have linked all of your information below. So your website, your Instagram, your blog post, and in that blog post, we have where people can find you as well. So if anybody watching, make sure you check the description below and you'll be able to connect with Anna whenever you're ready.
Yeah.
So thank you
Ask me
so
any
much.
question.
Thank you.
Yeah, we really
Thank you,
appreciate you
girls.
spending the time with us, and we'll definitely stay in touch.
Yes. Thank you so much. Good luck with your book. I hope it finds everybody who needs it.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.